Hey guys, tonight we dived into hunger hormones, a really crucial part in understanding how your body works. Knowing if you're under eating or overeating are two really important signals to understand properly, because you'll probably realize that it comes back to really simple cues that we teach a lot, which is understanding fueling the body, not starving the body, and some cool little things to make sure you're focusing on to understand whether you're under eating or overeating, and then more importantly, how to focus on building your body back up. So I hope you get a ton out of it, and I hope you watch right to the end so that we can really get an awareness of how to help you moving forward. Understanding those hunger cues that come through. And I think it's a really important topic when we're navigating how the body works, especially as we're seeing shifts in how the body functions, right? Maybe we're starting to get over that 35, that 40, that 45 mark where we're seeing the body just not respond like it used to. One of the big shifts that we communicate a lot with our clients is not what used to work, right? Or trying to work to what we used to be around, the 20-year-old self versus what does the new 45, 50, 55 version look like? And how can that be something we're pulling towards rather than not wanting to be anymore, right? So something we're pulling towards rather than something we're pushed away from, if that makes sense. Taking that time to really get an awareness of what works now rather than trying to hold on to what used to work. That's kind of where I'm going. And one of the big things that comes through there that I think is really a crucial core part of that body not functioning is an awareness of some of these hunger cues coming through. So it's kind of where I want to start today's conversation, is understanding where those come from. And there's two key hormones that come through that give that signal, okay? And the first one is ghrelin, which is the signal to eat, right? Actually being hungry, which is really important. And then there's leptin, which is a signal to stop eating. So actually get to the point, if you feel like you're overeating, to, I actually feel full. Okay, so those can be two really crucial ones that come in that allow us to build awareness of what to focus on. Now, I'm going to start on overeating. If you feel you're like someone who feels like you eat too much, you feel like you don't know when to stop, and you always feel hungry, and you tend to splurge, you tend to go overboard a little bit. The biggest thing that comes through there is maybe identifying first why you're overeating, and that sounds really simple, but the big thing that we need to look at is, are we dehydrated? Are we stressed? Is there a certain emotional boredom that's coming through that we need to look at first, and really identifying that, because that's ingrained into us as human beings to seek external sort of comfort when things are getting uncomfortable directly, right? A simple example is I'm working away, and then I lose concentration, so I pick up my phone. Or I've had a really big week, so I go and grab a beer, right? It's those cues that come through, and they're everywhere. And eating is no different. So taking that time to get an awareness of maybe some of those emotions coming through, and what can we replace as a helpful habit to moving forward. So if there's an awareness of stress coming through, maybe we go for a walk, or we do some sort of breath work, or we do something that's more calming rather than just grabbing a beer, right? So we're replacing the habit, not removing the coping mechanism, if that makes sense. So taking that time to identify maybe why some of those overeating habits coming through is really helpful. The next one we need to look at, which is really common, is we tend to not sleep enough. So if we're not getting more than at least 6 hours of quality sleep in a row, right? Actually sleeping through the night, getting 6 hours. If we're not at least getting that at minimum, what's going to happen is our body is going to overeat in order to fill that energy gap, right? If we're not sleeping enough, we're not going to have enough energy. So our body is going to overconsume in order to fill that gap in energy, just a function in the day. So that really easy way to stop overeating is actually to start looking at getting better sleep and taking the time to look at what we're eating, how the body's working, looking at stress in our night routine to build back up a good level of sleep. So we're in a position that we're not getting those overeating signals coming through a lot. Comes through a lot when we're looking at shift workers or night workers. So, it's a really big one to look at when you're trying to get really good quality sleep in. And the third one I'll bring up is a concept that's mind-blowing, but it's the idea that most people in today's world are overeating, yet they're undernourished, right? They're eating too much, but they're not getting the nutrients from the food they're eating. So what's coming through there is that they're eating the wrong stuff. They're eating really calorie-dense food, right? Highly processed, but they're not eating enough nutrients. So the body just keeps eating more because they're like, well, I don't have enough zinc, I don't have enough copper, I don't have enough of these nutrients to really function at a high level. So I'm going to keep consuming. So taking that time to look at the quality of the foods you're eating, more of the whole foods, less of the processed, is a really nice base, is a really good signal to allow the body to get those natural signals come back, right? Taking that time to get that strong leptin response again. And that's really important. If we've been on a really long diet, or we've been under eating for a long time, things like that leptin signal can be really weak, and they don't come up for a long time because the body feels like they're in a survival mechanism. They feel like they're in a position where they don't know where the next meal is, right? So they're going to store that body fat. They're going to tell us to keep eating and over consuming more and more. So taking that time to first not go on a restrictive diet in the first place, but two, look at the type and quality of the food we're eating. So we're not getting such a strong ghrelin response to continue eating, and we're getting a much stronger leptin response to know when to stop, right? So overeating, a really, really common one to look at to build an awareness around getting a stronger signal if we feel like we're in a position that overeating is really common. Now, the second one I want to touch on, which is just as common, if not more, but is really under the radar, underutilized, not understood, is taking the time to look at undereating, right? So not eating enough. Now, this comes up a lot when you're not seeing body fat shift like it used to. We want to drop some body fat, so we drop down how much we're eating. Classic, let's eat less, let's train more, and our body fat will drop, right? Well, not necessarily, because we might at a certain point, if the body's healthy enough or it's young enough, we might drop some weight initially. But if we're eating a certain amount of calories and we drop down the amount we're eating, our body's going to eventually adjust down to this new normal. And if you keep doing this, it keeps adjusting down. It's going to take down your immune system. It's going to take down your energy. And if you keep dropping, it's going to take your personality with it. All right. So taking that time to really build the body up, so we're not having to just drop our calories into a corner to the point that our body's no longer functioning, even at 1,000 calories. And we've been there. I've seen so many clients go down that route. The goal here is, how can we build the body back up? How can we make sure hormones are on our side? How can we make sure the gut's on our side? How can we make sure we're recovering and have that metabolism working at a higher level, that we're able to burn the fat off rather than starve it off, right? It's a huge shift in focus and understanding around how we coach our clients, right? Fuel, don't starve. And this is really a big problem, is people are under eating and they're still putting body fat on, right? Because they've dropped, and now they're in a position they're still in a excess of food intake, but not because they're eating too much, because their body's just not working like it used to. So if you're in that state, you feel like your body's feeling a bit old, a bit tired, a bit just dragged down and not getting that same energy as it used to, we need to look at how do we fuel that body back to good energy, rather than trying to starve it down and ruining the body further. Okay, so it's building the body back up. So the biggest thing we need to look at is firstly, having a look at our schedule and looking at our stress tolerance. The biggest thing that comes through, and I know from personal experience, if we're going through periods of high stress, if we're cranking along on a big work project or something's happening in our life where stress and that sort of survival mode is coming through to really get shit done, then you'll start to really notice that high cortisol really blocks that leptin response to feel like we're hungry. So we just don't get hungry because we just go through the day, we're worrying about everyone else's stuff, and we're not thinking about ourselves enough to just eat, right? And then as soon as we finally sit down, we realize we're starving, we haven't eaten for hours and hours, and then we overconsume, or we do whatever from there. But if we continually do that, and we continually to block those responses, it can really start to get in the way of how our body functions. And the problem is, most people call this fasting, right? Well, fasting's helpful if you're already healthy, if you've already got a good amount of muscle and you're not stressed. If you're not eating because you're so stressed out that you don't have that signal there, then fasting's a really, really bad place to be. And I think the problem is we're starting to use fasting as this diet tool, and really we're just becoming more and more disruptive with our eating patterns, and we're trying to find a way to justify it. So there is definitely a place for fasting depending on the individual, and I would say more intermittently rather than every single day, but taking that time to not use fasting as our technique when really we're just not fueling that body properly. And this happens a ton when we start to see our body change. It's not working like it used to. We need to take the time to fuel that body. Okay, we need to eat more. We need to eat the right stuff, because if we don't, we have all those nutrient deficiencies. Our body's just not able to fuel at a high level, and you'll notice the body just gets more and more bogged down. So prioritize get an ability to realize how much you actually need to eat to build that body back up. Our clients are always surprised with how much we get them to eat, and they're still dropping body fat, simply because of the simple concept of getting our body back on our side requires us to fuel the body with a certain amount of nutrients. It needs those nutrients to function. And if you don't give it to it, it's going to feel more, it's going to suppress itself more and more and more. The trouble is, it's not just your energy, it's your brain function, it's your immune system, and it's all of those vital functions in the body. If you keep dropping things down, the body starts just running at a really, really low rate. Okay, so those are the two things I want to touch on with you today, is getting awareness of overeating and how we can bring in some signals to look at the quality of our food to make sure we're taking the time we're giving the body the nutrients it needs to get that signal back. The second one there is, most people, if they're not dropping weight and they're in a position the body's not responding, they tend to eat less and less. It's just making the process worse. So taking that time to really build back up the body through eating the right foods, through fueling that body, and really starting to manage this process of getting the right fuel in to make the body work rather than starve the body and suffer through is a big shift in focus, but it does really, really help. I hope that gives you a little bit of an awareness of maybe where to start around overeating and undereating, and maybe just challenging your beliefs, because if you feel like you're eating less and less and less and the body's not working like it used to, please reach out. I'm more than happy to dive into this a little bit more, because we've done it time and time again with people that have been through diet and diet and diet. It's not a sustainable response. We need to front load your health, get your body back on your side so you can build an approach that you feel great on for years. If you don't have that, we need to look at how we build the body back up through fueling it with the right nutrients and going the right way. If you do it wrong, yes, you'll overeat and you start putting weight back on. If you do it right, you'll get your energy back, you'll get your personality back, you'll get your sex drive back, you'll get your recovery back. So many important things to make sure that you show up as your best. So undereating is the sort of under the radar thing that is not seen a lot of. Yes, there's the overconsumption that again comes down to a lack of nutrients, a lack of color and flavor and nutrients in the food. And undereating is just as big. If you're struggling with weight, you're struggling with body composition at some level, those are two key areas to dive into. And if you want more help with that, please reach out and we can dive into that a little bit more for you and identify which one of those categories you might come into.